This video is going to explain single-member districts and proportional representation systems. In single-member district electoral systems, a country is divided into voting districts. As you can see, these white lines are all different voting districts, and each district gets to send one member to the legislature of that country. In the UK, these voting districts are called constituencies, and the people elected in the UK are members of parliament, or MPs, that go to the House of Commons. In this electoral system, a voter goes to the poll and is given a list of candidates, not parties, although the candidates are usually associated with a party. And the candidate that gets the most votes is usually the one that wins in this kind of system. So the winner gets a seat in the legislature and is the single member that represents that district. These systems are typically first past the post or plurality system. That simply means that the candidate who had the most number of votes wins. This is a horse racing analogy. In this picture, do you see this is a post, and the horse that passes the post first is the one that wins. So it doesn't matter if there are 10 horses in the race and 2 are really close. The one that has the best time, the one that passes the post first with the most number of votes, is the winner. And it's winner takes all. There's only one person who can represent that district. Here's the electoral map from 2017 again from the UK. You'll notice a couple of things. There are a lot of different parties that have districts, but by and large, most of the seats have gone to the blue and the red parties, or the Conservative and the Labour parties. You'll note that some of these districts are very geographically large, like these yellow ones up here in Scotland, compared to some of the ones in England where the population density is higher. So in London, for example, there are several districts, several constituencies, but we can't see them because the scale of this map isn't great enough. But if you were to look at a list of all of these parties, you would see that a very large number of them are Conservative, followed by Labour. Another thing you might notice is that a lot of these minor parties or minority parties tend to cluster in specific regions because of the multinational nature of the United Kingdom. So for example, Scotland has a lot of SNP, or Scottish National Party MPs. In Northern Ireland, this part of Ireland is part of the UK, not part of the Republic of Ireland. And in green, this is Sinn Féin. These are the Irish nationalists who would like all of Ireland to be one unified country. And then you have the DUP, the Unionists, who want Northern Ireland to stick with the UK. So these people have a very, very strong concern about their nation within the UK. And that's why they're able to get enough votes to beat out the two dominant parties, the Conservatives and the Labour Party. So overall, you see in the UK, there are some minority parties that are able to win in these single-member districts, but the vast majority are these two parties, so you get sort of a dominant party system. This is an example of a guy I once worked with when I was at Amnesty International. Alistair Carmichael is a member of parliament from Orkney. And Shetland and Orkney is this group of islands just northeast of the Scottish coast, and it's a stronghold for the Liberal Democrat Party. And you can see that he ran against 4 other parties. In that part of the country, the Liberal Dems and the Scottish National Party are the strongest, and unusually the Conservatives and the Labour are not so strong up there. But you can see that he won with 10,000 votes, even though it was just less than 50% or a majority. So here you can see how close it made a difference. If you go to a runoff, he probably would win with a majority. These folks would have to choose. So in the COGO 6, the SMDs are UK, Iran, and Nigeria. The mixed systems that have SMD and proportional representative systems are Mexico and Russia. And China is completely unique because people do not vote for their national representatives. Citizens only vote at the local level, and the local level representatives vote for the regional level, and the regional level votes for the national representatives in the National People's Congress. A couple of notes. In Iran, all the candidates running for office have to be approved or vetted by the Guardian Council. They must be Shia Muslims, for example. So Iran provides 14 seats for religious minorities, the Zoroastrians, the Baha'i, the Christians, for example. In Nigeria, it's a plurality system within single-member district, but at the same time, you've got to have at least 25% of the vote to win. In all three of these countries, the UK, Iran, and Nigeria, the winner is the one who wins with a plurality of the votes. The most number of votes wins. So why do SMDs tend to lead to two-party systems? Well, in a winner-takes-all system, the minority parties are sometimes not going to get as much support because a person doesn't want to feel like they've wasted their vote. So, for example, I might want to vote for the Green Party, but I realize if I vote for the Greens and only one person can win in a district that's dominated by Democrats and Republicans, then my vote doesn't really make a big difference. If I'm closer to the Democrats, then it would be smarter for me to vote for a Democrat, even if I don't like them as much, because I'm closer to the Democrats in my position than I am to the Republicans. So third parties are often not supported because people don't want the party they like the least to win. And that is very evident in the United States. So for example, in the US, it's a very, very strong two-party system. This is another country with single-member districts. You can see that there are only 4 independents of all the members of the House of Representatives and only 2 independents in the US Senate. Very strong two-party system, really driven by the fact that it's a single-member district electoral system. I want to say a word about majority versus plurality and make sure you don't get confused. All of the SMD countries in COGO 6 use plurality voting for their legislative elections, but some of them use a majority system for their presidential elections. So Iran and Russia, for example, require a majority of the votes, and so if they have a presidential election and there's not a candidate who gets a majority, which is 50% of the vote plus 1, then they go to a second round and they take the top 2 vote getters from the first round and face them off for a runoff election or a second ballot. And then at that point, a candidate is likely to get a majority. In Mexico, you can win the presidency with less than 50% of the vote as long as you got the most number of votes, the plurality. And Nigeria is a plurality with a special formula that a candidate for president has to get 25% of the vote or more in at least 2/3 of the states. And that, of course, is to deal with making everybody feel from all the different ethnic groups that they are represented properly or adequately. You'll remember that citizens don't elect their executive in China. The president is put in power by the National People's Congress. And in the UK, the executive is the prime minister, and the prime minister is the leader of the party in the legislature with the most seats. All right, proportional representation systems is the contrast system. Voters are given a ballot, and they have to candidates indicate in the election which party they prefer, and then the different parties get a percentage of the seats based on the percentage of votes that they earned. And this means that even the minority small parties have a chance of at least getting 1 or more seats. In SMD systems, that just generally doesn't happen so much. it's much harder for a minority party to win in a winner-takes-all SMD system. As mentioned, Mexico and Russia are the two COGO 6 cases that use PR, proportional representative, but they also start out with single-member districts, so they use both. It's mixed. So voters vote for a party, the party makes a list of candidates, and the candidates get to be seated depending on the number of seats that that party wins. Usually there's some kind of threshold. The party has to win a certain percentage of the votes to be able to get any of the seats, and it's usually something low like 7%. The pros and the cons. The proportional representative system can feel like you're getting more choices, and you do have more choices of party. And so you can have a lot more variety in the kind of policies that different parties can propose in a legislature. And so those smaller parties have some shot of winning. But it can also mean less unity, more division. It can be more challenging to pass laws because you still need a majority of lawmakers to vote for a bill. And you've got to be able to figure out how to put together a coalition of lawmakers to support your policies. So these proportional representation systems tend to come out of multi-member districts. For SMDs, there is a chance of a little bit more unity because the major parties act kind of like coalitions. And it's easier to pass legislation when it's only two parties competing against each other as opposed to multiple parties trying to pass legislation. But it can give the voters a feeling that they have less choice and less voice because the policy positions often are the result of lots of compromises between a wide group of people, and positions are often moving towards the center. So for example, for the United States to pass universal health care like we have in Taiwan and like they have in the UK and many advanced democracies, it would take a lot to be able to pass legislation like that because that is kind of a position that maybe a minority party might want to advance, like the Social Democrats of Bernie Sanders. Over time, that policy idea may seem less fringe and a little bit more mainstream, and perhaps then the Democrats could move that forward. But at the moment, there aren't votes in the US Congress for something like that. Here's a map of Mexico's system. You can see that these are the two parts of their system. The SMD, the single-member district, is 300 of their seats, and here is the proportional representative system. You can see that the districts for their proportional side of their system are much larger. This is a multi-member district, and these are the proportion of votes that came in for this district. And so 200 of the seats get divided up according to the proportion of the parties that were voted on. And then 300 of the seats was a winner-take-all. So this district, for example, goes to the red, or the PRI, the Institutional Revolutionary Party. So what do you do in a system like that? So in a system in Mexico, they tend to form coalitions so that they have an easier time passing legislation in the legislature. So here you can see Morena teams up with PT and PES to move their agenda forward. Strangely enough, PAN, which is more a center-right party, and the PRD, which is more center-left party, have created a coalition. So they must have some agreement around some key policy ideas to have made that coalition. Russia is the other mixed system. Half of the seats in the Duma are allocated by proportional representation. They've got to have at least 7% of the vote to get any of the seats, and half are those single-member districts. And the regionals have a similar formula. All right, thanks for watching. I hope it made sense. Reach out if you have any questions.